Welcome, everyone. We will call the Board of Education Truth and Taxation hearing and special meeting for June 19th to order. All board members are present with the exception of Dawn Sneed, who has an excused absence, and I believe Ken Hall is on his way. All right. We have approval of the agenda.
Motion approved.
Motion from Nick,
Second.
second from Andrew. All in favor say yes.
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 Opposed, same sign. The agenda is approved. Recognition of gifts and hearing of people present. It doesn't look like we have no one for this meeting. All right, we have the Truth and Taxation budget hearing.
Thank you.
Mr. Briggs.
Yeah, thank you. So just would be remiss to not mention all people that put so much time into that packet. So it starts with the superintendent, his cabinet, the principals, and all of our directors, along with their administrative assistants, are really the front line of compliance when it comes to us having transactions in order and also having transactions be in compliance. And then all the departments and administration building, the business office, and I would just like to give special thanks to Jody Martini and Stacy Johnson for all their hard work. You just have had a lot of grants this past year, and between the two of them, they just have done a lot of extra work, which should be noted for making these recommendations be orderly and truthful. So Dr. Vanderjagt has his first slide up there, which is the general fund revised budget. To note in this budget, we're really in the second of 3 years of our largest ESSER grant, we call it 11T. It's $6.8 million. We're planning, we spent 7,200 the first year, which is 21-22. We're going to spend 2.5 million in this fiscal year, which is 22-23. And we're going to have the balance of $3.6 million that we're going to spend in the 23-24 fiscal year. And most of that is spent on extra summer school for kids that are 11T eligible, after school tutoring for 11T eligible students. But the biggest piece of that program is we call multi-tiered systems of support. We've got those folks in all buildings, and it's having great success returning kids that had learning loss during COVID. Another note you'll notice here is we added $4.7 million in both an expense and a revenue budget. The state gave us extra revenue to in their last year budget to make up for extra retirement costs, and that's an in and out. In Michigan, a lot of times when we get extra money, when the legislature contributes extra funds to our retirement system, they want to send us the money to us so they can show like they're spending more on us, but we ship it right back to Lansing. So there's $4.7 million of expense and revenue in the books this year. I just also want to note that we had some real positive, financial performance this year. On 6 instructional positions alone, we saved $280,000 over original budget. That was a lot of work for Ann's office to find subs, but we budgeted in the original budget. We planned for those positions to be staffed all year. And you saw that last week with all the hires we had. So just in 6 positions alone, we saved that much. And then in transportation, we were under budget there, under the original budget. We bought one less bus than we planned for, and the price of diesel fuel was high, but it was not as high as it could have been for our original budget. And then also part of the statutory part we have to mention, along with the tax rates at the end, we're budgeting to add $1.3 million to fund balance, which will put us at 21.2% of budgeted expenditures. Next slide, please. Now this is another look at our general fund budget, and you'll notice there, the main topic I'm going to talk about on this one is the original budget for 2023-24, but it also lays alongside of it the revised budget. If approved tonight, that will be the revised budget for 2022-23, along with 2 years of actual, 2021 and 21-22. Highlights in this budget, we're assuming for our original budget that we're going to get a $458 per student, which is 5% increase in our base foundation funding per student. And we're also budgeting for 19 more students. The 19 additional students is an added revenue of $182,000, and the increase of 5% per student is $3.2 million. It's a factor of where we are in the state of Michigan. The legislator, governor agreed on targets this week. They're working hard to finish the budget. It's not done. And so I usually get asked, what's the risk in this budget? So I'll just answer it now. It's just, we don't feel there's risk of the amount per student being lower. I would say we've been told they're going to give us extra money for retirement again, and there's also a likelihood that we'll get more than $458 per student. So some contingencies, and that'll come out of that process. Right now, the governor's representative, along with the representative of both the House and the Senate, are meeting to finalize the budget. Then next year will be the last big year of spending for the 11T grant. As we backed out of this budget, both the $4.7 million for expenses and revenue for that state retirement. Also to note in this budget, we've talked about this for 3 or 4 years, well, at least 3 years on with the board, how much we're going to budget for the opening of the 5-6 building. So in salaries, we've got a pretty good handle on that. We know a lot of the names of the positions, but in this budget, there's another $809,000 of staffing. And that's not in the instructional area, that's the principal, assistant principal, custodians, administrative assistants. That's the total cost there. And then within this, because it's a new building, today, for instance, we have our maps. We just don't have really anything for this building. We budgeted an add of $992,000 in some instructional supplies, textbooks, maintenance equipment, custodial supplies, and then we have budgeted for additional utilities as well. So $809,000 in staffing and $992,000 in supplies and purchases. And then again, just like the revised 2023 budget, we're budgeting right now to spend, actually decrease the general fund balance by $1.6 million, which would reduce us to 19.2% of budgeted expenditures. And it's been the long-standing practice of this board to budget conservatively, so we have budgeted conservatively. We expect that final use of fund balance to be less, and that's been, I know it's been the trend for the past, I've been here, this is my 15 years going back. We budgeted conservatively, and that's served us well. Next slide. I mentioned this small fund, but just the WCET activities in that fund are actually included in that slide before. So part of our general fund appropriation, WCET is a part of it. We're the fiscal agent for WCET, and their funding has been cut pretty dramatically. It's part of the PEG fees and just the things that the local governments capture on cable bills. So the WCET board is working hard to come up with alternative revenue sources. Next slide, building site simplified. Yes. So as you can see there on the top, our property tax revenues are increasing for the building and site safety fund. Next year in 23-24, we will also have the millage fully restored. That millage gets rolled back every year, so we'll be back up to the full millage amount that's in the last page of the presentation. And our interest earnings through just some changes in banking, and as I said, Stacy Johnson in our business office has got into some very secure investments. We're investing in actual, it's like a money market fund backed by treasuries. It's really helping us on our interest rate. So then I'll just note in 23-24, we've got a budget on there. If we've been buying for years, the district's been buying adjacent properties to our school buildings, to our school sites. And then in the $750,000 line item for 2023-24, we've got a parking lot project at the Baldwin Street Athletic Complex that may need some additional revenues, but building and site sinking fund is very healthy. On the debt service fund, I don't have a lot of highlights here, but you'll notice if you look down, it's the last item in revenue. You can see the trend line there for the loan from the state decreasing rapidly. And so 2.5 years, we will be actually able to start paying back our balance. I really don't have anything in particular to note on the next couple slides. You can flip to the one that's got, yes, very good. So this is our Jennison Hudsonville Food Service Department, and we're not the fiscal agent for this. It's really one of the only times we get this information to you as the board to show you what's happening here. They had some fabulous years during COVID because all the students, every student that ate, the federal government, as part of the COVID relief programs, they let us claim those students as 100% free. So kids didn't have to pay for anything, and the free rate is a higher reimbursement rate. So the fund picked up a lot of fund balance during those years. Excuse me. This fund picked up a lot of fund balance during those years. So right now, we can't keep that money. So we've had to do a plan to spend down fund balance. And what has happened is we've forward funded in the years the equipment replacement schedule. So the things that need to be, we're not throwing away good stuff. We're just purchasing things sooner than we would have otherwise been able to if we didn't have all that money. And it's also a part, it's one of the governor's targets for this year. It's quite likely that when this budget process is over, there's going to be state funding to be universal free again. So that'll be a state revenue, not a federal revenue, but that's, I would say, it's not 100% sure, but it's one of the governor's targets. So it's likely to come out of the budget process that students will be universal free again. We don't know if it's going to be as lucrative as the federal program, but it will be better than, because when a student eats a regular paid lunch, we do get some funding, but it's just not very much. So, next slide. Yeah, this is another mandatory subject of the hearing. We have to say the tax rates, and so I'll just go through them, read through them real quick. For the general fund, we're planning to levy with your approval the full 18 mills allowed by law and by the vote of the people. The building and site sinking fund, we're planning to levy a full mill that was restored this past May 2nd. And the debt service fund, we are planning to levy 7 mills. That concludes my prepared remarks. Are there any questions?
Ted, you talked about $809,000 to open the new 5-6 building. Was there a projection made on what that number was? What was the projection?
Yeah, good question. So we, 3.5 years ago, we projected our total costs to be between $1.7 million and $1.8 million. And I'm not that good of a prognosticator, but it did land pretty close to that number. So it's what we expected. And it's I don't know if I made this point before, Greg, but a lot of those costs are front loaded, so we won't have to spend as much in years 2 or 3.
Any, you're talking in Lansing right now on the proposed budget, any idea on the timeline of when we'll have actual numbers?
I know their intent is to have at least the school aid budget done before June 30th. It doesn't help tonight, but that's definitely their intent. And they would like to have all their major budgets done by then. So yeah.
You do expect it to take.
Pat, you mentioned we purchased one less bus.
Yes.
Does that impact our bus replacement schedule? Because we had been, I remember a few years back, we were in kind of a pickle for buses, but we needed to be purchasing buses.
Yeah, good question. So there's been a couple factors in the last 3 years, but the biggest factor has been we haven't had as many buses on the road because we're having a hard time getting enough drivers. So this year's been stable. We haven't had to cut any routes because we didn't have enough drivers this year, but we're down from 62 routes to 48 routes. So the need hasn't been there to put us, and that's a route. The definition used to be a bus went out and picked up kids, took them to school, went back to the bus garage. And now that same bus route will many times go get some kids, and we do it by density in the neighborhoods. Go get some kids, probably the outlier, the kids that are farthest away, drop them off at school, and then make a B trip that morning and pick up the rest of the kids in a couple densely populated subdivisions around the school. And so we've been creative to get the kids to school and get them home. But we're fine on our replacement schedule. It just had to be adjusted. They didn't need to buy as many buses as quickly as we projected.
We made a substantial dent in that replacement schedule, because initially we had buses that were 20, 26 years old, and now we've got them all to, I think, under 17.
Yes.
Dr. Vanderjagt, how is the situation? Did we have to add any bus routes because of the jettison?
No, those buses all the same routes before. I think what Pat was referring to is some of the double runs that we have in the middle school. A lot of are at really on the south side of the district. So it varies, but those routes have always run.
Sure.
The volume just depends on who decides to be on the bus.
Yes.
Questions for Pat?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent.
As always.
Next on our agenda, we have our consent agenda with approval of our minutes from June 8th. We have a motion for the consent agenda.
So moved.
So moved from Ken,
Support.
support from Mark Davis. All in favor say yes.
Yes.
Opposed, same sign. And the consent agenda is approved. Were there any questions on the agenda, other minutes, consent? Right, next we have our regular action items, and these are all the items that Mr. Briggs just presented. So I'll put forward a motion that the board approve the 2023 budget revisions, the 2023-2024 original budget, and the tax rates for summer of 2023 as presented by Mr. Pat Briggs, our Assistant Superintendent, which is very finance. Motion on the table?
Just a clarifying question, we can take all those three in one.
Fortunately, better to do all three just because of the summer tax rates. We could do them in one, but we can do them separate. It doesn't matter,
It doesn't matter.
but the tax rate is kind of, so.
So you guys. I move we adopt this.
All three.
Support.
Support by, Nick. Any questions or comments for these items? Hearing none, all in favor say yes.
Yes.
Opposed, same sign. Action items have been approved. This concludes our agenda for our truth and taxation hearing. What? Oh, can you,
I think
sorry.
I put that on air.
Sorry,
I apologize.
All right, next up we have human resource items.
That's not an issue.
Yes.
Oh, that's supposed to be there, yes.
That's what's good.
What's on print, what's printed over there?
I grabbed this off the table over
Oh,
there.
yeah.
Does it say human resource items? I'll make a motion that there are no human resource items for the board meeting tonight.
Although, take care.
Sorry about that.
It's not.
All right, having no other action items on the agenda, we can do adjournment. We'll do board roundtable after work session. Need a motion to adjourn?
I'll move that.
Motion by Mark, support by Andrew. All in favor say yes.
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 Opposed, same sign. All right, our special board meeting for truth and taxation hearing, special meeting.
Thanks, Pat.
Thank you, Pat, very well done.
Thank you.